Get ready to go atomic, because today we're doing a deep dive on Niels Bohr,
Ooh, Bohr.
the guy who basically reshaped how we see, like, the tiniest building blocks of everything.
Yeah.
You've probably seen his model in a textbook somewhere, but honestly, his influence is way bigger than some simple diagram.
Right, right.
Get ready for some physics,
Sure.
philosophy,
Oh, yeah.
even like global politics, all connected to this one guy.
It really is remarkable how much one person's work can touch on so many different things.
Totally. And what's crazy is how early he started this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not talking about a kid who was just, a science nerd from day one.
No, not at all. Actually, he was a serious athlete.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a goalkeeper, good enough to play with his brother.
No way.
Who went on to become an Olympian, Hurl.
So, like, pro-level athlete family.
It makes you wonder, right?
For sure. Like, was there a moment where young Niels was like, nope, lab coat over football cleats?
Right, exactly.
Or was it always a mix of these passions for him? I mean, teamwork's huge in both, when you think about it.
That is a great point. And actually, when you think about his model later on, it wasn't a solo thing either. He built on what Rutherford and Planck had done,
Right.
showing that even huge discoveries often come from, that foundation of earlier work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But to get there, you got to have some serious brain power.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, his doctorate was on the electron theory of metals, which, looking back, it's like foreshadowing, right? This fascination with the tiny world of atoms.
Yeah, it's like he was already getting a feel for how those electrons behave, even in stuff we can see and touch every day.
Exactly. But then he zooms in on the atom itself.
Exactly.
So, refresh my memory here. Why was the Bohr model such a revolution when it first came out?
Okay, so before Bohr, the atom was kind of a puzzle. We knew about the nucleus, thanks to Rutherford,
Right.
but how the electrons were arranged around it, nobody really knew.
Okay.
Bohr's model, with its energy levels, those orbits,
Yeah.
it brought order to the chaos,
Yeah.
Simple visually,
Right.
but huge conceptually.
And this wasn't just a pretty picture, right? It actually explained things that had scientists scratching their heads for decades.
That's exactly it. The Balmer series, for example.
Okay.
This mathematical formula that describes the colors of light emitted by hydrogen. Scientists had been stumped by this for 30 years.
Wow.
Bohr's model, with those electrons jumping between energy levels, absorbing and emitting light,
Right.
it explained the Balmer series perfectly.
So he cracked the code.
Basically, yeah.
Showed that these tiny particles,
Yeah?
their behavior was linked to something we could actually see, light.
Exactly.
Mind-blowing, honestly. But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Bohr didn't just explain stuff, he actually helped to discover a new element, right? Based on his model.
You're absolutely right. He predicted the properties of what we now call hafnium, element 72.
Wow.
And that prediction guided its actual discovery.
So, hold on. This wasn't just theory. This was Bohr directing experiments in the real world, based on his, atomic know-how.
Exactly. So we see this pattern emerging. Model explains mysteries, leads to new discoveries.
Yeah, like a cycle of insight and innovation.
Exactly. And that innovative spirit, it went beyond his own research, too.
How so?
Bohr, he was all about collaboration. His institute in Copenhagen, it wasn't just a lab. It was like a magnet for brilliant minds.
Okay, this is interesting because I was reading about Bohr's admiration for that philosopher, Søren Kierkegaard.
Oh, yeah.
Another Dane, right? But Kierkegaard was all about individual existence, subjective truth.
Yeah.
Seems kind of opposite to scientific collaboration, doesn't it?
At first glance, yeah, it does seem like an odd pairing.
Right.
But maybe Bohr saw a deeper link there. Both science and philosophy are about seeking truth, right?
Yeah.
Even if they approach it from different angles.
Okay.
Maybe Bohr recognized that those individual insights, when you bring them together, that's where you get a more complete picture.
So it's like the individual spark,
Yeah.
like what Kierkegaard might have been into, fuels the collaborative fire that Bohr built at his institute.
I like that analogy.
And we're talking big names here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Kramers, Klein, even a young Werner Heisenberg hanging out there.
It was like the physics all-star team of the 1920s.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about star power, was it?
No.
It was the atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
Encouraging bold ideas.
Exactly. The BKS theory, for example.
Yeah.
Trying to merge quantum and classical physics.
Ambitious.
Very. And while it wasn't completely right in the end, it showed their willingness to push those boundaries.
Right. And then there's matrix mechanics.
Oh, yeah.
Another big piece of quantum theory coming out of that same collaborative spirit. So it's like Bohr laid the groundwork with his model.
Yes.
And then built this space where the next generation could take it further, refine it, even challenge it.
And that's a crucial part of Bohr's impact, you know?
Yeah.
He wasn't just changing our view of the atom, he was changing how physics itself was done.
Right. That collaborative, questioning, always evolving approach, that's a legacy that's still shaping research today.
Huge. Okay, so we see how Bohr changed the game scientifically. But there's this other side to him that people often miss. The philosopher in him.
Absolutely.
He wasn't content with just equations and models.
Right.
He really wrestled with the deeper meaning of it all. You know?
Absolutely. And nowhere is that more evident than in his principle of complementarity.
Right.
Which goes way beyond a scientific concept.
Yeah.
It was his attempt to, reconcile the weirdness of quantum mechanics with how we understand reality itself.
Yeah, the whole wave-particle duality thing.
Yes,
it just doesn't fit neatly into how we experience things day to day.
Right.
So how did Bohr try to make sense of that?
He said those seemingly contradictory properties, like a particle acting like a wave, they weren't mutually exclusive.
Okay.
They were complementary aspects of the same reality.
So it's not that they contradict each other. It's that they give us a fuller picture when we see them as completing each other. That's it. A shift in perspective, right?
Totally. And this wasn't just limited to physics, was it?
Not at all. Bohr saw the potential for this to go way beyond the lab.
Really?
Into psychology, philosophy, even art.
Wow.
He believed it offered a new way of thinking about the world, embracing those paradoxes.
Yeah.
Recognizing that our own perspective has limitations.
Deep stuff.
Yeah.
We're getting into some seriously deep waters here.
I know, right.
But before we get lost in the philosophical abyss, let's bring in some historical context.
Okay.
Bohr's living through a time when the world's on the brink of war, and science, especially physics, is about to take center stage in a really scary way.
Yeah, this wasn't just some abstract geopolitical thing for Bohr either. It got very personal. He saw the rise of Nazi Germany firsthand, the persecution of intellectuals, people he knew.
So we're not just dealing with a brilliant scientist anymore.
No.
We're talking about a man facing moral dilemmas in a world that's literally on fire.
Exactly. And how he responded says a lot about him.
No.
He actively helped those fleeing persecution.
Really?
Giving them temporary jobs, money, connections to find safe havens.
It's hard to imagine juggling groundbreaking scientific work with this effort to literally save lives.
It was a lot, and it shows that his values went way beyond equations and theories.
Right, like a deep commitment to humanity.
Exactly, a fight against injustice, all of that woven in.
It's a much more complete picture of the man behind the science, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the whole atomic bomb chapter of Bohr's life.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It gets really complex, still fascinating historians and scientists.
It's hard to square that with the Bohr we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The collaborator, the humanist, and then boom, atomic weapons.
It's a lot to process. How did he deal with all that? Well, I guess it starts with that famous meeting with Heisenberg in 1941.
Oh, yeah, right in the middle of World War II.
Heisenberg was leading the German nuclear program then.
Wow.
And what they actually talked about, it's still a mystery.
It's like a spy movie almost. Right. Two huge names in physics, used to be friends and colleagues, meeting in occupied Denmark while the world is falling apart around them.
Crazy, right. So what do we know about that meeting?
I mean, anything concrete.
Well, we've got Bohr's account and Heisenberg's, and they don't quite line up.
Oh, really?
Some people think Heisenberg was low-key trying to figure out how far along the Allies were with their bomb project.
Like fishing for information?
Maybe even trying to get Bohr to work with them.
Wow.
Others think, no, he was genuinely struggling with the ethics of it all.
Okay.
And wanted advice from, his old mentor.
So, was it spying? A moral crisis? Maybe both. It's amazing how one meeting has become such a huge deal for, debating the role of scientists in war.
I know, right? It highlights that tension between pursuing knowledge and then what do you do when that knowledge is dangerous?
Yeah.
Especially in the wrong hands.
And for Bohr, this wasn't just theoretical.
No.
It was life or death stuff.
Exactly. Because if the Nazis got the bomb first...
Catastrophic. So how did he react to that threat?
Well, he fled Denmark in 1943.
Right.
Ends up in the U.S., joins the Manhattan Project.
Wow, so he's part of the Allied effort to build the bomb.
Yeah, talk about a tough decision.
Imagine the weight of that.
I know.
Unthinkable destruction on one hand, but maybe stopping an even worse outcome on the other. How do you even reconcile that with, like, humanist ideals?
It seems like he focused on the post-war world.
Okay.
This idea that having such a weapon, it would actually prevent future wars.
Like a terrifying balance of power.
Exactly. He also pushed for international control of the technology.
Smart.
Believed that transparency, cooperation, those were the only ways to prevent a full-blown arms race.
So while working on this super secret project, he's already thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Global governance, preventing the very thing he's helping to create from destroying everything.
And that forward thinking, you see it in his open letter to the UN in 1950.
Oh, right. I've heard that.
It was this passionate call for an open world.
What did he mean by that?
Sharing scientific knowledge, building international institutions.
Okay.
All to help with the dangers of, nukes spreading.
So even after all the devastation of the war, Bohr's trying to steer humanity away from the abyss.
Yeah.
Using the same scientific insight that kind of got us there in the first place.
It's pretty amazing. And it wasn't just about nuclear energy either.
What else?
He was a big part of setting up CERN.
The European Organization for Nuclear Research.
Right.
Huge, huge deal.
Another example of his belief in collaboration being key to progress.
And to peace, ultimately.
Totally. There were debates about where CERN should be located, and Bohr really pushed for Copenhagen.
Interesting. So even as he's getting older, he's still fighting for this vision of a united scientific community.
Yeah.
One that goes beyond borders and politics.
Absolutely. In the end, Geneva got CERN.
Right.
But Bohr's advocacy was huge in making it happen.
So that legacy of collaboration lives on.
Big time.
Right.
He understood that tackling the biggest questions about the universe, it takes a joint effort. Bringing together the best minds from all over.
It's amazing how this idea of collaboration,
Yeah.
which we saw early on with his institute in Copenhagen,
Right.
becomes almost a philosophical stance for him later on.
Yeah.
Like breaking down those barriers between nations and scientists, that's essential for humanity's future.
Powerful stuff. And it didn't stop with CERN.
What else did he do?
He helped set up the Nordic Institute for Theoretical Physics in '57.
Wow.
Was its first chairman, too.
Never slowing down.
It's like he never stopped pushing for more knowledge, more spaces for people to work together and come up with new ideas.
Clearly, Bohr's impact wasn't just about science. It was about so much more.
Absolutely. He was brilliant, yes.
Right.
But also a humanist, reluctant participant in the atomic age.
Yeah.
A visionary leader who really shaped the world of science.
He's dealing with some of the toughest ethical questions of his time.
No doubt.
And he came out of it as a voice for reason, for cooperation,
Yeah.
for a future where science is guided by like an awareness of what it can actually do, good and bad.
Such an important point. And I think that's a key part of what he leaves behind,
What do you mean?
He wasn't just giving us models and theories.
Right.
He was making us think about what should we do with this knowledge?
Mhm.
Science at its best, it's about making things better for humanity, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the universe and our place in it.
Big stuff. It's been an incredible journey exploring Bohr's life,
Hasn't it?
from tiny particles to global politics.
Yeah, the scope is insane.
It really shows how science is connected to everything we do.
Absolutely. And what's so cool about Bohr is that he embraced those connections.
Right.
He saw science as a core part of figuring out who we are and what's around us.
You know what that reminds me of? Complementarity.
Oh, yeah.
We've touched on it, but it deserves another look, I think.
This is one of those ideas that starts small and then just explodes outwards, makes you rethink how you see knowledge, perception, reality.
It's not just about waves and particles anymore.
Yeah.
It's about realizing that different perspectives, even if they seem contradictory,
Yeah.
they can actually make our understanding stronger, whether it's about science, history, even a person's life.
Complementarity becomes a tool, almost.
Yeah, like for navigating all the complicated stuff.
Right. Embracing the nuance, seeing multiple sides.
Because truth isn't always simple.
No, it's messy. It depends on context.
It's like Bohr was giving us a way to deal with that messiness.
Exactly. Something that goes beyond the neat world of classical physics.
And when we apply that lens to Bohr himself,
Ooh, interesting.
it helps us understand all the different parts of him. The scientist, the humanitarian, the guy who helped build the atomic bomb.
They're not contradictions. They're all part of who he was.
Like that coin we talked about.
Mm.
You need both sides to really get it.
But there's another level to complementarity, even deeper,
What's that?
observer-influenced reality.
Okay, now we're getting trippy.
Right. This is where Bohr goes full-on mind-bending.
So this is the idea that just by observing something, we change it.
At the tiniest level,
It's
even...
subatomic particles.
Yeah, it's like we're not just watching reality, we're part of creating it.
Whoa.
It challenges that whole classical idea of a world that exists no matter what we do.
So it's not just about our senses being limited.
No.
Or the tools we use to measure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the act of observing itself having power.
Mind-blowing, right. And philosophically, this raises all sorts of crazy questions.
Like what?
If we change things just by looking at them, can we ever know objective truth? Or is the world we see just something our minds make up?
Okay, now that is existential crisis territory.
I know, right? But this is what Bohr was grappling with, pushing the boundaries of science and philosophy.
Making us question everything.
Yeah, and that's part of why he's so important, I think.
In what way?
He wasn't just a genius who came up with new theories.
Okay.
He was making us confront the biggest questions about reality itself, what we can know, our role in it all.
He left us with more questions than answers. But that's kind of the point, isn't it?
I think so. It sparks more curiosity, keeps us searching.
Yeah, like fuel for that quest to understand the universe.
Exactly. And in that way, Bohr's influence is still going strong.
Inspiring new scientists, philosophers, anyone who wants to tackle those big mysteries.
What a legacy. It's been amazing diving into Bohr's world with you.
It really has. We've seen how his ideas changed our view of the atom, how his values guided him through war, how his philosophy still makes us question everything.
It's been quite a ride.
And through it all, we see how one person's dedication to science, to humanity, to just plain curiosity can leave a mark that lasts for generations.
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening,
Yeah.
keep questioning, keep exploring, keep diving deep.
It's kind of wild to think about how Bohr's work goes from these tiny particles to, like, global politics.
Yeah, it's huge.
It really shows how science is woven into, well, everything.
It really is. And what's so interesting about Bohr is that he was never afraid to explore those connections, you know? He didn't see science as something separate. It was a core part of trying to understand ourselves and the world around us.
That makes me think about his whole thing with complementarity.
Oh, yeah, complementarity.
We've talked about it, but I think it's worth another look, especially when we're trying to grasp, like, the full impact of Bohr's work.
I agree. It's one of those ideas that starts in the lab and then just kind of ripples outward, right? Makes you question your assumptions about how we know things, how we see things, even reality itself.
That's like, whoa, deep.
Right. It gets to the heart of how we make sense of the world.
It's not just about particles and waves anymore.
Nope.
It's about recognizing that sometimes those seemingly opposite views, they can actually help us understand something better.
Yeah.
Whether it's a science thing, a historical event, even a person's life.
Totally. And in that sense, complementarity becomes this powerful tool for dealing with complexity.
Okay, how so?
It encourages us to embrace nuance, to consider different viewpoints, and to recognize that truth is often, well, multifaceted.
Right, it depends on context.
Exactly.
It's like Bohr was giving us a framework for dealing with the fact that reality is messy, ambiguous.
Yeah, it goes beyond that neat and tidy world of, like, classical physics.
And when we apply that lens to Bohr himself, it helps us see all the different parts of him.
The scientist, the humanitarian.
The guy who worked on the atomic bomb.
Right, they're not contradictions. They're all part of the whole picture.
Like looking at both sides of that coin.
Exactly.
You need both to understand what it really is.
But, you know, there's this even deeper layer to complementarity.
Okay, what is it?
This idea of observer-influenced reality.
All right, now we're getting to some seriously mind-bending stuff.
This is where Bohr really pushes the limits, I think.
So this is the idea that just by observing something, we change it. Like literally.
Yeah, even at the subatomic level.
Even those tiny particles.
It suggests that we're not just passive observers.
Okay.
We're active participants in shaping reality.
Whoa, that's heavy.
It challenges that classic view that there's a world out there that exists independently of us, you know?
So it's not just about our senses being limited.
No.
Or the tools we use to measure things.
It's about the act of observation itself having an effect.
That is a truly mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
And philosophically, where does that lead us?
To some pretty big questions. If our presence changes things, can we ever know what's truly objective?
Yeah.
Is the world we experience ultimately just a construction of our minds?
Okay, now we're in existential crisis territory.
It can feel that way, for sure. But this is what Bohr was wrestling with, right? Pushing the boundaries of science and philosophy, forcing us to confront the limits of what we can know.
He didn't give us all the answers, but maybe that's okay.
Yeah, maybe that's part of the point. He left us with questions that ignite our curiosity.
Yeah, they keep us searching, exploring, trying to figure things out.
Like fuel for our quest to understand the universe.
And his influence is still felt today, inspiring all these scientists, philosophers, anyone who's drawn to those big mysteries.
Absolutely. What a legacy. It's been incredible to explore Bohr's life with you.
It really has. We've seen how his ideas revolutionized atomic physics, how his values guided his actions in a world at war, and how his philosophy still makes us question what's real, what we can know.
It's been a wild ride for sure.
And through it all, we see the power of one person's dedication to science, to humanity, to simply wanting to understand how things work.
It's inspiring, honestly, to everyone listening. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop diving deep into those fascinating, sometimes mind-bending questions that shape our world.
Yeah, that's what Bohr would have wanted.